And now for our feature presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
You're listening to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. Call in to join the conversation at 646-668-8393.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. It's the six-man Dean Geronimo in the studio with Mark Lee, and we welcome you to yet another exciting episode of our show. And once again, just like that, it is 7 o'clock. It's the last Monday night in March. It's the six-man Dean Geronimo here in the studio with my right-hand man, Mark Lee, from NJ to NC. That's how we do. So, Mark, tell me what's good in your neck of the woods, my brother.
There's no doubt about that. It's always got something jumping and going on. So we had some real serious things happening. Matter of fact, we had Women at Work on Saturday, which was a celebration of Women's History Month. So we had everything from dancers, Nicole Oxendine and her group Empower was there. There was some poetry from African drumming. There were just all kinds of amazing performances. I put some of those on my Instagram account, at least one of them, and I'm going to try to get some on the other ones as well. And then on that evening, my good friend Renee Nixon, she's been doing this play called Worried, and she's done a new version of it called Worried 2.0. So, you know, it's just exploring all kinds of different scenarios and monologues where people can be worried about things. So, you know, there might be a situation with a cheating spouse. So that was one of the worries. There might be some situations with kids that might be getting in trouble with the law. So that was one of the worries. And some of the worries you weren't expecting. Like there was one worried situation where the person thought they were engaged to one gender and found out they were engaged to another because the person in the middle of the dialogue was like, you know, I used to be so-and-so. So they had all fallen in love and everything, and then they found out that they had fallen in love with somebody that used to be that was a whole different kind of worry. But definitely some folks were out there chuckling and cracking up on some of the different scenarios. Some of them were very profound because I remember one person, they were worried about some health issues, you know, things that might be taking them out because one, I think it was the last one, the guy had breast cancer. So, you know, we think about that as being usually a female-associated disease, but it is a fact that man can get that disease as well. So, like I said, Renee is always doing some very powerful things in her plays and definitely some thought-provoking things. So we had that going on. Then Sunday we had two church services with Christ Central, the church that meets there every Sunday at the Hayti. As a matter of fact, coming up in April on Easter Sunday, they're going to be doing 3 services. So I'm going to have a long day with them on that day because they're going to do not 1, not 2, but 3 services. But that afternoon, that evening, there was a gentleman there who I've invited to come on the show, Rufus Stevens, I believe is his name, and he's a motivational speaker. Okay. So he was talking about just us living in our promises and, you know, they're definitely not letting the negative kind of energies that some folks can give us where they want to take us back down the road to our past and the things where we crashed and burned and want to take us, as he called it, back to the crash site. And he's like, no, you don't need to have them take you back to the crash site. You acknowledge that crash happened. You acknowledge that you made a mistake, but you move on and live up to your promise and your purpose. Because he was even talking about how I want to say he might be in his 60s or 70s, and he has been doing different things. I think he went on a run, like I'm talking about like in them serious runs, like he's marathon or a half marathon or something like that, and his brother has gone his brother has gone bicycling through multiple states, not one state but multiple states. So like I said, they would, and I want to say maybe somebody that was related to them in their 80s had gone rollerblading for the first time or roller skating. So, you know, they were definitely doing things outside of the norm, but trying to live life to the fullest. And speaking of living life to the fullest, I got to mention one other thing before we get into some of the other colors of the conversation. I'm expecting some of our guests to be calling us and everything. But Miss McLaughlin, who is a icon here in the Durham area, I saw on her son's Facebook post, and this is January, I believe it's this year, so it's probably, if it hasn't happened already, it's coming up, but she's getting ready to come up on 103. And what I cannot remember is if that is already happened or if that's going to be happening later on in the year. I need to look up for Mr. McLaughlin, who's a jazz musician and a musician that I know from the area. He's also done R&B and other kinds of sounds. I need to look it up and find out if it was either March or if it's coming up. They were definitely making celebrations of the fact that 103 was either here or on the way. So, you know, somebody can make it into the century mark, they should definitely be commended. So we're talking somebody that has made it all the way to 103. And the last time I saw Miss McLaughlin, which was not that long ago, it might have been a month or two ago, she was still able to talk as much trash as you wanted to hear from anybody, and she would definitely put you in your place and definitely remembered a lot of things. I'm not saying that she might not have lost some memories and had some other issues that happened with aging, but best I can tell, she might be here for another 50 to 100 years, because I don't see any signs from what I've seen of slowing down. She just seems like a force of nature, as they say. So she should definitely be commended for this long life that she's lived, and she's done some amazing things. She's been an entrepreneur. She's raised kids. Like I said, her son is a musician and also a pharmacist. She's got a daughter that is a professor at Bennett College. You know, that college that was in trouble and things of that nature. And then she's got another daughter that has done some very positive things in the work world as well. So, you know, it's not just her own legacy, but she is creating a legacy for others also. And, you know, another thing that we should talk about is Best of Enemies. You know, that movie is getting ready to hit the national scene. They showed a preview of it at the Carolina Theater, where I serve on the board, and that was well attended. And actually, Taraji Henson was there. I did not make it, but friends of mine in the political circle, like Jillian Johnson and some just in social circles of mine, they did make it, said that they had a great time. Some even got pictures with Miss Henson. And, you know, this is about a lady who was passed on, Miss Ann Atwater, and she became friends over some common cause with Mr. Ellis, who was a Klansman. So even though these were some people coming from two differently parts of society, they did find some common ground. So it was just great seeing that the commercial world and the movie world is honoring her as well. So that's just amazing seeing that this going on. They did film it, you know, to have a little slight beef with them. She is a Durham icon. We have movie people in Durham. They could have filmed it in Durham, but, you know, for whatever reasons, probably because the producer and some of the other people live in Atlanta, they opted to film it in Atlanta. So, you know, if I had my druthers, we would have had it filmed in the state where she was known at, and even in the city that she was known at. But, you know, I don't make those decisions. That's up to those producers. So I can't argue with their choices, because they decided that they wanted to do something that's different than I wanted to do, because I would have brought, you know, some celebration here to the city itself. But who am I to argue with what they got to say?
You know what? I mean, to be honest, man, her story is getting out. So that is what counts. Most important thing, even if they filmed it in the middle of a wheat field, bruh. I mean, to have our stories start to be told, and things that, you know, have kind of like disappeared to a certain extent, because all the time were silenced to a certain degree. So now you have people saying, nope, those stories were told to me, and I'm going to make sure that the world knows about this story and how this molded part of our history, you know. So I'm glad it's coming out. It'll be out actually next Friday, the 6th of April. So, you know, make sure you go out and support that. Also, if you have not seen the movie Us, the Jordan Peele movie, make sure you go and check that out. It topped Captain Marvel this past weekend for, you know, in box office sales. So he's doing his thing as well, man. You know, he first came on the scene with the Get Out joint, and now he has this one. It's a unique movie. If you don't pay attention to the whole thing, you're going to miss some important parts. But make sure that, you know, for those who have not had the chance to go and support it, make sure you support it, because that's another, it's one of us, you know. It's
definitely. And we've got to support our own. And by the way, I did look it up. William McLaughlin, it was yesterday that he posted it. So they had coffee at St. Titus Church, which is a church locally, and there's a big sign here that says 102. So apparently she just recently turned 102. So what William McLaughlin said, Mom is on her way to being 103 years old. Wow. And this is coffee at St. Titus Church, and there's a whole lot of people that are in the background. I'm seeing some guys, some ladies, and others that are some of the folks that definitely were there to honor this fine lady. So like I said, she has hit the 102 mark, and as he put it, she is on her way to that 103 mark. So much kudos to Miss McLaughlin.
You know what? Yes. Respect to her. God willing, I would live to be close to that. You know, if I got to see 102, man, I would seriously be happy. But if I could get close to that, I think I would still be all right. But it's to be celebrated when individuals pass that century mark. And, you know, as Black doesn't crack too much, she probably looks like she's about, and I haven't seen a picture of her, but I bet you she looks like she's about 70, 75 years old.
You are very correct, and I will be posting a picture of her on our page and everything. But when you look at this picture, you're gonna be like, "There's no way this woman is 103 or about 102 on her way to being 103." I mean, yes, she does have the white hair, but you know, she's dressed in a stylish little outfit and everything. And there's no, like I said, you're gonna be sitting there going like, "That's not possible. She cannot be 102." When you see this picture of this woman that is definitely, like I said, part of the institutions here as well. So it's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to hear what your reaction is when you see that picture, because I know you're probably going to be right. You're going to be like, Mark, she's got to be 70. She cannot be as old as you were telling me that she and even her son are saying that she is. You're just not going to believe it. By the way, I got a question for you, because you know I've done this as well, and I heard I heard somebody talk about it earlier. It was actually on a sports anchor that mentioned it and everything, and I was just amazed by it. So we're getting ready to just change the topic real quickly. But, you know, I've gotten some stuff in the mail by accident, and usually I try to find it in Massachusetts, not that far from you. A gentleman was arrested last week because he was got a flat screen TV that was not his. They sent it to his house by mistake, so I actually think it's on the other people. But it says 35-year-old Nick Memo described what happened at his Freetown, Massachusetts home Monday night when he was arrested for larceny and misleading a police officer. They found an 86-inch flat-screen TV mounted to the living room wall. They surrounded the house and knocked on the door with flashlights coming through all the windows. They told me to come outside, then handcuffed me. He said he admits it was delivered to his home by mistake, myself in jeopardy. I said, do I need to hire an attorney? They said I wasn't under investigation. They were just asking questions. I answered a lot of questions with I don't know, just so I didn't jeopardize myself. He said he bought and paid for this 74-inch flat screen on Amazon. When a third-party shipping company delivered it, they also gave him a larger model TV by mistake. When asked if he ever thought they made a mistake and whether they should return it, I did, and I looked into all the laws, and I said, you know, it's a scratch ticket. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So I heard one of our athletes talking about this and whether this was something that he should get in trouble for and things of that nature. So I want to know what Dean says about this, and also whether you accidentally got something, whether it was something like a lamp, because that's what I got like about a month ago, and I did find out that it belonged to another apartment down in this complex, and I got it to the right people. But I was just wondering, have you ever gotten something mistakenly shipped to you, and did you hold on to it for a minute?
You know what? I've had some shipped to me, and you can read on the label, it's not for you. I made that phone call, Jack. I don't even know what was in the box, man. I'm like, listen, y'all dropped the package off at my house. I'm going to put it right back outside. Y'all come pick it up, take it to where it needs to go. You know, and they were like, okay. I was waiting for them to say, can you drop it off? I was about to say no. You know, but so those are the things that, you know, some people say, you know what, I would keep it. But look at what happened to this dude. Man, you going to get locked up for keeping this shit? Nah. You can take that stuff right on back. I'll be good. I'm good with, you know, not having what I wasn't supposed to get anyway.
So you're perfectly fine with that. You're not trying to get something else that you know did not belong to you. Speaking of folks getting stuff that probably did belong to them, what do you think about this whole situation with that person that sits up there in the, Johnson City up there in D.C., and apparently after we went through all this stuff, Mueller has come out and said, hey, there was no Russian coordination. They didn't do anything together. Now, I do understand that he's not totally out of the water. There's some other investigations going on, but, of course, he's trying to turn the table on those others that might be investigating him, including some folks from New York and other stuff. And then, of course, it doesn't help that one of those people got themselves into trouble with Nike. So that's being the person that was connected with Stormy Daniels and her attorney. So I was just wondering what you think about the fact that so far they're saying that nothing happened.
Does it surprise you?
No, I was kind of expecting that,
Okay, because some people are kind of pissed that you're very well. And what I want to know is, hell with that, because that all of that stuff right there, people paying attention to it, it doesn't affect me in any kind of way, honestly. I want to know what laws just got passed or what is about to be imposed on the American people while they diverted your attention to pay attention to this garbage. What did they do that's really going to affect us on the back end? And they said, oh, by the way, now you must do this or you won't be able to do that. So, I said that the other day. They were like, well, he's going to get another 4 years. I was like, that's not guaranteed. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So unless y'all got some clairvoyant powers, use it for good and tell me what the hell the Powerball numbers are going to be, because that drawing's about to be $750 million. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what those numbers are. I could care less about the Mueller investigation. Nobody's going to jail. Nobody was going to jail any damn way. So that part right there doesn't surprise me, doesn't hurt my feelings that, they didn't tell us or whatever it may be, because they weren't going to tell us anyway. We're not privy to all of those conversations that they are the masters of. We just kind of go with the flow and hope that things turn out in a favorable fashion so that we don't look like the dummies at the door that can't get in the club because we have no money. You know what I'm saying?
That's very true. That is very true, man. That's what we. Oh, I just heard a doorbell. But by the way, you just mentioned those numbers before we get to that doorbell, because I don't usually do this, but you said the magic number. It was $750 million. So I did more powers or is able to make magic happen. I just want them to call out 13, 14, 18, 26, 53, and 17, because that's what the computer generated as my numbers. So I'm putting my numbers out there. If anybody can make that happen.
But see, here's what now somebody just wrote those numbers down, right? And they're gonna listen to the replay tomorrow, and you're gonna have like 7 winners, man. You got to share your money now. You're supposed to keep that secret. But we're gonna get.
I know I'm supposed to keep it secret, but those numbers were too close together. So I think I'm gonna buy one more. They're gonna be the real actual winning numbers. Because when I saw these numbers, they were too close together. So I really don't expect to win, but they might fool me. And if they fool me, and I get 7 other people calling, it's $750 million. I don't mind splitting it with a few people.
All right. You heard it here first. On Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. We'll be with our guest in 1 second.
The old Renaissance is the new Renaissance, standing on tradition while embracing the spirit of distinction. This is the Harlem Brewing Company. Uniquely crafted beer brewed to deliver a taste, a sound, and a feeling that can only be described in one way, Harlem style. So come and take a trip on the A Train with our Harlem Sugar Hill Golden Ale
and we are back. We are bringing our guest in. Thank you for calling Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. You are on the line. Tell us who you are and where you're calling from.
Hey, this is Julius Tillery. I'm calling from Garysburg, North Carolina, home of the Black Cotton Office.
All right.
Well, we definitely appreciate you calling, Julius. I've always been trying to get you on for a while now, so I'm glad that we have finally caught up and are able to get you on. Hey, Dean, Mr. Tillery here is doing some amazing things. We've had in the past some farmers on the show and some people that are definitely about the agricultural industry and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Well, Tillery has got some land, some massive land, and he's got some cotton on that land along with some other products and everything. But, he's trying to find ways to make some money off of that cotton. So he's turned this cotton into, like, not just the regular things that you do with cotton, clothes and things of that nature, but he's also made it into, like, what I call some artwork, because he's actually got some real fancy displays that he sells and everything. So he is doing some amazing things with his company and everything. So I want Mr. Tillery to tell us about that and everything. But before he got on the line, we were teasing, yes, and I did put my numbers out there because I don't expect to win. But I just want to know, if you win $750 million, Mr. Tillery, are you going to put it back in the farm, or are you going to go on some extravagant trip?
Oh, I'm going to have one of the flyest farms you can ever imagine. It's going to be like an amusement park if I win $750 million. You can bet that.
I hear that.
So you're going to have, like, you're going to have rides there. You're going to have Ferris wheels. It's going to have all kinds of stuff. It's not going to be your average farm.
Yeah, it's gonna make, like, a whole lot of lists. Like, just the coolest place to ever go to.
I know that's right. So,
nice.
Mr. Tillery, tell us how you got involved with Black Cotton. Like I said, I know that your family is into farming, so you grew up among farmers, so you know what's happened with the loss of our land and things of that nature. So I just want to know how you got into farming and how you think we're doing in terms of supporting our farmers. So like I said, every time I talk to people, they're usually complaining that big farms are doing well. They're making tons of money off the big farms, but the small family farm, not as well. And our farms, not as well, because a lot of times we lost our land because we didn't understand generational wealth and the importance of that land that we had. So I just want to know how you got involved in farming, how you got involved in Black Cotton. If you just want to share with us a little bit of the story growing up as to how you got involved in farming, and also what you see as this new direction that you're taking.
I'm a lifelong farmer. My father's a farmer, and his father's a farmer, and his father was a farmer before him. So it's just like the industry that we into with our land. And so I've always farmed, but I really didn't look at it as a business. I just looked at it as something that we did, like a chore. Like, if you had a farm, you just worked it. That's what most people did. But I understand, like, growing up and seeing how hard it is for our African Americans to hold on to this, farmland and family farms. It's just it became a passion of mine to, like, try to help other farmers. So, and from helping other farmers and being an advocate, I realized for the best role I can help my community is to make a successful business, because I'm from a poor community in the state. So I wanted to make a successful business, and I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I'm inspiring people with my business, which is Black Cotton. And Black Cotton is a concept that I came up with because I wanted to add value to my cotton. I initially thought it was going to be clothing, and I thought I was going to just easily turn my cotton into textiles, but it's really not that easy, and it's a lot of money involved in that process. That's why most farmers don't have their cotton going specifically to a textile company. Then most farmers sell to a co-op, and then the co-op deals with the manufacturers, the processors, and all that stuff. So, I've always been a part of the co-op system. Well, my family has always been part of, selling to the cotton gin, and the gin, take care of the business in some kind of fashion. And we get some money back for the cotton. But I felt like we're not making enough money back for the cotton. Like, I look in clothing, like, I always grew up and said, why is clothing so expensive? Where I know us working in the cotton fields, we're not making that much money from cotton. So I've always thought, like, I need to be a part of the value chain process. And once I realized what's required from it, I found this to be the leanest way for me to participate and get my cotton directly into customers' hands. And that's through decorations and accessories that are handmade in my Black community with Black workers. I'm really focusing on the Black control, and it's something I believe in, because my Black community is struggling. I want to change that through business.
Yeah, definitely, because I remember growing up in Warrenton, which is a small town as well, and a small rural town. We would sometimes have, that was more of a tobacco town. I think there might have been some cotton up there as well, but definitely I just remember the kids when I was growing up in the late 70s, and even when my brother was going to school later, but he actually went to school down here for the majority of his school. But I remember kids getting out because they were going to get out for being able to pick the cotton and pick the tobacco and things of that nature. So I remember I was in the city limits, and there was only a few of us students in the early part of the school year because everybody else was out there working, because that was part of the nature of what you did, and the school system understood that. So they understood that part of the schools were not going to be as full as they might be later on in the year, because folks are going to be out there helping their families, because it's definitely a family-run business, whether it's tobacco, whether it's cotton, whether it's peanuts, whatever the product is. So we know that it's oftentimes a family-owned business. And I'm sure you probably, even though you're younger than me, probably had a similar kind of thing where your folks were pulling you or having you out there working the fields, and then they let you go to school.
Well, you know, when I was born in 1986. I feel like the agriculture game changed to what it is now, the modern agriculture. Like, you know how basketball became modern basketball, like maybe in the 70s, the 80s? I feel like agriculture became modern agriculture in the 80s. Like, I've never seen hand-picked cotton in my life. And
right.
I understand the system because I've worked with people, my dad and my grandfather, and they'll tell me how it went, but I never seen it myself. You know, hand-picked cotton. So, like, a lot of people from our region, we stopped working in agriculture in the 80s because we had the harvesters and less people wanted to be in agriculture. Then you had the whole bigger is better, and farmers was buying other farmers' land and stuff, and everybody's trying to get bigger. So I was born and I've seen a lot of the transformation of agriculture to what it is right now. So, like, someone like you might know about the old ways of agriculture, but you might not participate in the modern day of agriculture, and you might be lost in how things is run today compared to how they worked in yesteryears, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I can definitely understand that. I mean, things are always changing on a consistent and regular basis, and we know that a lot of times the way that things were done, whether it was in my generation or whether it was in people's generation back in the Great Depression or different other generations, that there's always changes in the agriculture game. And you just mentioned earlier about the high cost of clothes and everything. That's something that has always amazed me, because you're right. I know for a fact that a lot of what the cost of doing these things is not nearly the cost of what we're paying for our whether it's the Air Jordans, but now the Air Nikes, or whether it's some of the other on the shoe side, or whether it's some of these fancy clothes that we're paying high end for, because you know they're inflating the cost in all kinds of different ways. So we know that that shirt that we're paying not astronomical, but some decent amount for, the actual cost of producing it might have only been pennies on the dollar.
Well, I can tell you right now what farmers are getting on each T-shirt that you buy, and it's basically about 40 cents.
Wow.
Pretty much, yeah, like 40 cents, because like it takes about half a pound of cotton to make a T-shirt, and half a pound of cotton is 40 cents. You know, so that's just something that we need to think about, and when we shop, and like why this stuff costs so much, like I think Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren and these mega people, they're the furthest things from the cotton fields. Who are why can't we change the game where the people who are the closest to the cotton field can make the most money? That's kind of
Yeah, you're doing a good job with that too, because like I said, it's amazing how you're doing that, because you're just doing some amazing things. Now, who are you selling to mostly with the black cotton? Because I know I've seen you at events in Durham, like at some festivals, and of course at the BU, places like that. But I just wonder, how are you marketing this whole product, and how much of the cotton that you're growing is going into the product? Because like I said, you have some very big farmland, so I imagine that it all can't be going into this kind of boutique, artistic kind of ways that you're doing cotton. So I imagine that some of it's got to be going into other things as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, like 99% of my cotton is in the conventional cotton game, and pretty much 1% of my cotton goes into this black cotton thing. So the customers I mostly sell to are like home decorators, people who want to buy items with a social conscious, people who just want unique gifts, interior decorators, florists, people who care about, flowers. Really diverse. Now, I'm selling it really across the nation. I've sold more than 30 days now. It's pretty much like somebody with a product.
Yeah, And what are some of the ways that you get into the with the other 99%? Because like I said, you just mentioned it earlier. It's not easy to get into some of these big companies and everything, particularly coming out of rural North Carolina. So what are some of the ways that you're trying to break into the bigger game, or what are some of the ways that your family has broken into the bigger game, if y'all have had luck with that, or is that still an ongoing struggle with some of the things that you're doing with the land? Because like I said, I know that I've seen pictures. That's some amazing spread that y'all have. So I know that's a lot of cotton. So I'm trying to figure out how you're going to get into the bigger audience and what kind of deals you've been able to work, or is that still something that you and your family are struggling with?
Well, you see, like, you know, the conventional cotton game is basically everybody puts all their cotton in one group. Like, this is where all the cotton in the North Carolinas, I want to say 90% of the cotton farmers are selling to this cooperative, and then the cotton goes over to Asia to be processed. It's just like the big micro systems cotton. So, you know, that's the way we get it by farm sustainable, that we can farm. Soybeans as well. So typically we would raise about, 50 cotton, 75 soybeans. And, we do some vegetables as well. But most of the vegetables are things that we care about the community and health, and we want to kind of be, leaders and getting fresh foods into the community. But, with this cotton thing I'm doing is like my county, we most people are selling their cotton at the marginal world price. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to do a production, we also should be innovative in how we sell it. Like, we shouldn't just follow the tide companies to make creative things out of the product. And if right now in America with our consumer dollars, people won't care about the story behind products and where the product's made and who are the people making it and why they make it, and how are they making it. So I think with my type of business, it's transformative of how we look at some of these, like, commodity crops in the past. And it's more of a time that I've definitely grown, so to speak.
Yeah, because I know one of the other things that you just mentioned that I know has become a very big trend is just the way that, not just with the cotton industry, but a lot of people are trying to become more aware of what's going on just with their food in general, because there's like a whole movement with people trying to buy food that they feel is more environmentally conscious and also more economically conscious and is able to actually be supported and not just, yes, it's big business and yes, it's a lot of the corporate kind of things, but they're trying to make sure that they're doing it in a environmentally friendly kind of way, but also in a socially conscious kind of way.
Absolutely, that's a very catchy, trendy thing right now, where people really care where their food is coming from. And I would like to give a quick plug to the Black Church Food Security Network. I work with a food hub in North Carolina called the Coalition for Healthy Eating, and the Black Church Food Security Network in the Baltimore Mid-Atlantic region. They are a growing group where black churches in that region are buying their food from black farmers. And our North Carolina food hub has been, been one of the key partners for supplying that Black Church Food Security Network. So that's absolutely a woke audience towards healthy foods that are prepared and local and regionalized, specifically to, a certain, portion of the states.
Yeah, because I imagine that throughout the country, we always hear about these food deserts that are out there. So many people are getting caught up in eating fast food. I know I'm guilty of that because it's what's convenient, and we also know that's what's the most healthy. And then also a lot of times the grocery stores that we're going to, well, some of them are unfortunately a little bit, some of the more natural ones are on the more high end. So sometimes that's just the cost that you have to pay for having that kind of quality and everything. And then a lot of times they're also not in our neighborhood. So a lot of times, whether it's a regular grocery store like a Food Line or a Kroger's, or whether it's something a little bit more trendy and supposedly health conscious, like something like a Whole Foods, a lot of times they're not immediately near our neighborhood. So a lot of times our people wind up eating foods that we know are not healthy for us. So I just wondered, what are some of the ways that you're trying to encourage people to support our farmers, but also to live a more healthy kind of life? Yeah, they might have to go out for a burger every once in a while, but not make it a regular habit.
Well, I like to participate in farmers markets. We started a farmers market in my local Garrettsburg community. And I feel like, I'm not telling people they need to be at a farmers market every weekend, but, half the year, once a month, try to go to a farmers market, support right in your local community. because it keeps the money in the community, and also your produce is fresher right in the community. And I feel like produce tastes better when it's local. Like a lot of kids grow up feeling like vegetables taste bad, but they're eating the worst vegetables. You know, the stuff that's been in cans with preservatives or been trucked across the country. When people know the taste of farm to table, they'll prefer healthier foods. However, we've lost access to these healthier, foods because they really cost. I mean, it's really expensive to get labor-intensive food. So.
That's very true, but you're right. So, but that's become another new trend. Is we are seeing more people try to go from that farm to table kind of concept, where these restaurants are trying to get the food directly to their location, so that the food actually tastes a little bit better and things of that nature. So, I just wondered, do you think that that's a trend that is going across the country?
Absolutely. April 5th, I'm actually participating in a restaurant, Applebee's Table. Like, if your audience is ever in Baltimore, please go to Applebee's Table in downtown Baltimore's Holiday Street. But there's an event where they're trying to raise money for black farmers. This group called Farms that's based in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Jillian Hillshaw, they're partnering with Applebee's Table to do an event just to raise money to help farmers purchase farmers' produce. Like it's really good when we can secure farmers' purchasing their produce. That's what farms do. They make sure that somebody buys it, and then they find places to get the produce too. So that's happening in Baltimore, and they having people from they have a writer of a book called Freedom Farmers, Dr. Monica White from University of Madison. So that's Madison, Baltimore, North Carolina. It's it's just definitely going all across the country, especially black business, black foodies, black farmers. People are conscious about what demographics is catered to and producing whatever goods and services being offered.
And what do you tell people like yourself? Because, like I said, we've had this conversation with a couple other folks, including some people from the coastal parts of North Carolina. But when you talk to other people that are relatively young and everything, and they talk to you about the fact that they don't want to get involved in the industry because, one, they think it's a dying industry, and two, they just don't feel that they can actually make any sort of income on this. But we know for a fact that a lot of times the agricultural is even where some of our great athletes have come from. So I just wondering, what are some of the things that you say to encourage people to actually stay involved in farming and not to let the farmland continue to vanish and disappear? Because we know that that's a major problem in our community. We keep having our farmlands being sold to the big folks, and then after a while, we'll be sitting there crying the fact that we have even less and less land. So I just wonder, what are some of the encouraging words that you give to people when you're talking to them in order to let them know that this is something that they should be trying to at least consider as a career?
Well, when we're talking farming, I definitely like to advocate rural farming. And I'm from a rural area. Just somebody that lives in Durham but also lives in Eastern North Carolina, I want to say there's opportunity in Eastern North Carolina because we have a lot of buildings and a lot of real estate that's available at a very affordable price so a young person can get in business. I just feel like in Durham it just costs too much to be in business. Like, as we're speaking right now, I'm in my office, and I don't want to tell you how much I'm paying for my office space but in Eastern North Carolina, but I know if it was in Durham, this same space would cost $4,000, something crazy, And I feel like there's rural opportunities right now. So young people, especially ones that still have school debt or don't have a lot of assets, you might be able to find your opportunities to build your business in a rural community. And the way we sell things right now, I sell stuff all over the country, and anybody who's aspiring to start a business in 2019 should be thinking nationally. You should be utilizing the internet to be able to figure out how you can get products across the country. And when you're thinking in the scale of national, you need to keep your costs low. And I just know in our urban areas with gentrification and some of the issues we have going on, the affordability of being in business just doesn't seem like a possible thing. But in rural, it's possible. Use your head.
Yeah.
Create.
It sounds like it's more able to be done in the rural communities. But the other thing that I'm kind of curious about is, do you think that one of the things we've talked about on this show in the past is just some of the things that are not taught in schools anymore? And I remember growing up, and we're talking about the change in society, I remember the vocational courses, whether that was auto mechanics, whether that was farming, whether that was whatever, that seemed to be something that was more included and that more people did and use on a regular basis. But right now it seems that we've gotten away from that. I'm not even sure how active FFA and 4-H are to this day. I mean, I know that they're out there, but I don't know if they're as active as they used to be. So I was just wondering, how do you think we as a society are doing in terms of even finding ways like our education system to encourage people to be involved in things like farming?
Well, I would say this: FFA is still well alive. However, our communities don't focus, have been kind of excluded in some ways. I'm not saying it's FFA fault, or I don't know if FFA has thought about it, how to include more people of color in it. But FFA is still succeeding. But a lot of our communities, especially people of color, we are being locked out of vocational programs now. It's not, we have to change some of our public schooling to focus on vocational, programs. And I've seen, even when I was in school, vocational programs pretty much were being removed and people was focusing in on 4-year college programs. However, now I think we have a generation that maybe, have regrets on how much college debt we put in, didn't learn a trade, and having a tough time finding jobs now. So if we can focus on vocational programs, that's great. And I spend a lot of time trying to help young people connect to, vocational programs or agriculture-related, land grant type of, education. So I think it's a beautiful thing when we can get our people of color into different fields, and we definitely need to take out stigmas and taboo looks at those types of industries, because they are still thriving and progressing no matter what, and we need to be a part of it.
No doubt about that. Now, what do you think some of the taboos people have about farming are? I mean, one of them is that sometimes people just don't like the fact that it's hard work. I mean, a lot of times you got to get up, and I imagine you had to do that even as a kid, early at the crack of dawn, and you have to be working all the way until probably 9 or 10 until the sun sets. So I know that's one of the taboos people have, is that sometimes we as a society like to do things that we think are easy and quick, and we don't like to do things necessarily that are going to be time-consuming or that are going to take a lot of effort. So I know that's probably one of the taboos, but what are some of the other taboos and stereotypes that you hear that you have to fight against, and what are some of the ways that you fight against people that are telling you that it's too much hard work? Because, I mean, I know that's one of the things that a lot of people probably complain about when they talk to you. They're like, I'd like to get into farming. I'd like to get into some of these rural kind of communities and everything, but I also know that I don't have that kind of demeanor where I'm going to be sitting there able to tackle that tractor or tackle that harvester or tackle whatever other kinds of equipment that you need in order to have a successful farm. So I was just wondering, when you talk to folks, what are some of the ways that you fight against these stereotypes?
There's so many stereotypes when you're talking about farming and rural farming and black rural farming. Where do you begin? Like, I mean, I've heard them all my life. Like, people typically think that farmers are uneducated. Well, that used to be the notion, but now farmers are some of the most educated people. Typically, you think of farmers being poor, but now to own land and significant amounts of land, now it's like looked at as being, wealthy to own that much land. So it's everything that notions used to be in farming is kind of being flipped on its head. But even still, a lot of people don't like to be outside, and I just think that some of the best living is getting fresh air and being able to sweat. Like, in the urban areas, sometimes you don't get that same type of air and ability to just, breathe in and take in nature. So, I mean, it just depends on the perspective you share. So some people don't like bugs. I mean, I don't know. Some people just don't like, sweating. So, I mean, we just have a society now that's really internet-based, and sometimes, being outside is not, you're not in that world. You're in the real world.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that we've actually talked about even on this show, is the fact that whether you're caught up in the internet and whether you're loving the internet and things of that nature, a lot of times we also have to find ways to enjoy nature. Like I said, it can be something that's simple. I know sometimes when I go outside, I just enjoy seeing a robin fly through the air and watching the grace of the robin, or even some of the animals that I may not be the biggest fans of. Just seeing them out in nature is a wonderful thing. Like I said, I don't know that I'm necessarily trying to roll up on some of the environments, but, it's still good to see them in their own natural environment. And so I think sometimes we just forget to enjoy the environment that we actually see on a regular basis.
You're right about that.
So, because I imagine that's something else that you probably have to encourage people about, is that even if they don't want to get into farming, that sometimes I'm sure you probably just tell people they might just want to enjoy some fresh air and some nature, whether it's just going on a jog or whether it's going on a hike or whether it's just maybe even if they're in a rural area, just stepping outside and looking at the sky so they can see some of the wonders that exist in our world.
Well, I'll tell you this, just giving myself a little plug, but people have really enjoyed doing the Black Cotton Tour. Like just coming to my office, seeing where I work and with how I, turn the cotton stalks into art and going on to my farm and walking around and seeing our little farm. Man, people from all over the country have been doing it. I've had people from Seattle. I had a modeling troupe do a modeling shoot from Miami. People from New York, Delaware. I mean, so it's something cool to do. I mean, all you got to do is reach out to me at www.blackcotton.us at the contact us. Just shoot me a message. I always respond back.
And how have people found out about Black Cotton? How are you doing your own marketing? Because like I said, you talked about the internet, and I know that's an important part of your marketing. But how did these people, like say from Miami, with the modeling troupe, and some of these other folks, find out about you? What are some of the ways that you are encouraging people to find out about you? And exactly what is involved in the tour? Because, I've still got to do the tour myself at some point. It's been a minute since I've been on farmland. My mom still lives in Rocky Mountain. We still have family farmland that is all part of our property, but I've not been on the farms myself in a while. So I probably need to come and visit the tour as well as get to some of our own family farms because we have some farmland that's still out there that belongs in our family, but I've been not one to get by that as much as I probably should.
Well, come on now. It's always inviting to come down east. And,
and that's true.
But on the tour...
Yeah, so you were saying on the tour?
But on the tour, basically, you see my grandfather's house, my great-grandparents' house. We go and see the little family cemetery. I even actually have the family cemetery on the home place where the first generation started at, and he was born in 1871, Reverend D.L. Tillery. So he's who started pretty much our family farm, and he was born in Tillery Plantation. So right there, like we're really close to Tillery, North Carolina. So we kind of give a historical, understanding of like where our roots come from.
Now, when y'all started the farmland, was he first generation removed from slavery, the first people that started the farm, or was he right in with that person still in slavery, or how did it work in terms of the history of slavery in terms of when y'all took over the farm?
Well, he bought outright bought the first piece of land, and he was born in 1871, so it was right after the Emancipation Proclamation. But from my understanding, everybody who was from Tillery that was on the plantation still lived on the plantation. Like they just didn't pick up and move. So like him and my great grandfather, they both still lived in Tillery.
Wow, they still lived on the property that was originally owned by the plantation masters.
Well, no, they moved from Tillery to Rich Square. Like my family farm is in Rich Square, so they, D.L. Tillery, he bought the very first part of the farm in Rich Square. I don't know what brought him there, but that's where the first part of the farm started. And then my grandfather bought a part. My great grandfather bought a part. Then my grandfather bought a part. My father bought a part. So it's just it's been added on every generation.
Wow. And we know that the whole history of family farming is very important, but also the history, like you just mentioned, of having those family plots. Because I know even in Holliston, North Carolina, we have a family plot where some of my family members are buried at. Not all of them. They're buried in some other locations as well, but we definitely have a family plot that's in Holliston, North Carolina, and you just mentioned one there. So a lot of times I think that we as a people sometimes forget the rich history that our own ancestors have, that we need to keep their stories alive. So I think that's part of what you're doing with Black Cotton, is that you're not just keeping your own story alive, but you're keeping the story alive of your ancestors.
Absolutely, man. Like a big inspiration behind me doing this cotton thing is when I grew up, I knew so many black cotton farmers, and then I realized, not too many years ago that we're pretty much disappearing. So like, I'm afraid that my ancestors, I can't show the respect I want to by not letting us just disappear. And I'm not trying to knock everybody, 'cause I know how hard the business is, but I want to keep fighting to the end at least. And this is my way of fighting back.
Well, we definitely appreciate your fighting back that way and everything. I want you to stay on the line because we've got a couple of other people that will be joining the conversation because, as always on this show, we're covering a variety of different things. So we're going to go from the whole story of black farming to a little bit with theater because I think I've got Mr. Charles Phaneuf on the line, and I might even have a comedian on the line as well. But don't dang off the line because we'll be here all the way till 9, and some of the conversation may even loop back, or you may even want to jump into conversation because we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But definitely, I appreciate you being on the first part and everything. And will you give that website one more time for those people that might be interested in the tour and also learning more about black farming?
Yes, please. You can check me out at www.blackcotton.us or follow me on Instagram at blackcotton.us, BLACKCOTTON.us. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Appreciate it. And like I said, stay on the line, please, as long as you can. And, Dean, I heard at least one bell, maybe 2 bells.
You heard one bell. We have Charles Phaneuf on the line. He'll be with us in just 1 second.
Appreciate it.
This is Nikki Hall, founder of Simply Radiant LLC, a woman with great passion and skill to make you look and feel better. Meet me where you are. Let's take it to another level, a new you. See you soon. Call 919-971-6243. Make your place today.
All right, welcome back to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. Mr. Phaneuf, you are on the line with us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
How are you doing, Charles? I've known Charles for a while. I've known Charles back when he was a young man that was actually an intern, if I remember correctly. He was an intern coming from us from the D.C. area. So just to kind of like make a little bit of a transition and everything, tell us where you grew up and everything. And one, did you ever have any dealings at all with rural North Carolina or just rural living? Because earlier we were talking to Mr. Tillery, who's still on the line. And of course, he's talking about his business, Black Cotton, which is an artistic business. They're actually making artistic designs out of cotton and everything. But he grew up in rural North Carolina. And I know that you probably did not have that kind of background because I know part of your background was living in D.C., but I also don't know every other place that you've lived at. So I was just wondering if you would just share people a little bit about your history, and of course we'll get to Theater in the Park and some of the amazing things that you're doing.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Well, yeah, and first of all, hey, I'm also sorry about Marquette this weekend, man. Been thinking about you, and but you know, so goes the tournament, and it was a great season for y'all, all the same.
Yes, it was a good season, and we did get slaughtered.
John Morant is something, man. Just watching him play it's a joy, you know. But yeah, thanks for asking about my background. We, of course, we met at the Durham Arts Council in, I guess, around 2003, 2004. I came and interned at the Arts Council after I graduated from Carolina. Before that, I was in North Carolina for a while, living in Raleigh. Brief stay in Tarboro before that, but I grew up in Michigan mostly, and I moved around a lot as a kid. And we actually lived a lot in kind of rural areas because my dad was in manufacturing, so that's just kind of where, manufacturing was a lot. But now I do have kind of a different kind of relationship with rural North Carolina because my wife is from Greene County, and so I spend a fair amount of time going down there, and really love going and visiting her family. And it's definitely like I've learned some things about rural North Carolina that I didn't know, that are maybe a little counter to some of the things that people think in bigger cities. And but I love hanging out in rural North Carolina. Her family story is a little bit interesting. She was born in Kinston, but they moved to Greene County, which is a even more rural county because how great the schools were, and still are. And so that's been kind of interesting, spending time going down there with her. And then the theater, we serve people who come to Raleigh from throughout rural North Carolina, and we have some satellite programs that are also a little bit outside of the city. We do some programming in Wendell. We do some programming in Knightdale. Knightdale's not that rural anymore. Wake Forest, Apex. Some of those places are, obviously much more suburban now than they used to be. But yeah, so that's cool. I enjoyed listening to a little bit of the last segment and the gentleman talking about Black Cotton. So
yeah.
I don't know that I'm the most knowledgeable person you have about rural North Carolina, but I'm happy to.
No problem. I was just curious I was just curious what you thought were some of the stereotypes that surprised you when you were because you just mentioned that when you went to your wife's hometown and around those areas, you said that there were some things that surprised you that were, I guess, counter to the stereotypes that you were thinking when you were growing up around Michigan and everything. I was just wondering what were some of those stereotypes.
Yeah. Well, both Michigan and I think in Raleigh. I mean, for example, one thing that's interesting is that Greene County, I believe, is the first county in the whole country that provided every child with a laptop. And, they were able to get some, I'm not exactly sure the details of the grants that supported that, but, it's not, you don't think of like rural counties as being really, ahead of the curve on technology and things like that. But they really were. And, and then I think there's like other things that I wasn't surprised by, like, how good a lot of the food is and, the fact that, their family like knew a ton of people in agriculture. And, so yeah, I guess there's some things that were surprising. Also, her mom operates a retail store in downtown Snow Hill, which is cool. It's interesting to, see that there's kind of there's a lot of like businesses in like small towns in rural North Carolina that I think, I guess a lot of us now in Raleigh are like very aware of what's happening in Kinston because Kinston's got a little bit of a scene going on, but there's a lot more places that are doing interesting things and have a lot of revitalization happening.
Yeah, and more and more people are finding themselves having to move to those communities because, like you said, and like Julia said, the gentrification is out here and everything. Not everybody can afford the apartments that are existing in Raleigh or even existing in Durham, some of these prices that are out there and everything. But I was just wondering, one of the things I've always been proud of you about with everything that you do is a lot of your theater deals around social justice. I mean, yes, you do some of the classics and things of that nature, whether it's Shakespeare or whatever else, but a lot of times you're not afraid to use theater as a tool to make social justice statements. And I was just wondering, is that always something that was in the back of your mind growing up, or is this just something that you cultivated as you developed as an adult? Because that's something I've seen. Like you said, I know Theater in the Park has done stuff at Hayti. You've done stuff with the Sherry Holmes group that encourages black theater goers to come to different productions and things of that nature. So it just seems like you've been very much involved in just making sure that a lot of the plays that you've done have been social justice plays. I want to say we talked earlier at the beginning of the show about the movie that's now out about Ann Atwater. And I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't one of the early productions done at your theater, or was it connected with y'all some kind of way? I can't remember, but it seems to me that I have a vague memory of that.
Yeah, I wish I could say that we had something to do with that, but I did see that play at Man Bites Dog. You're talking about Best of Enemies, and that was a pretty spectacular production. And Lakeisha Coffey, Derek Ivey, that was really good. I wish we had produced that play. We probably can't get the rights now, but yeah, I appreciate you noticing that. I think that it's my interest in theater, wherever it's being produced, that it speaks to what a community is interested in talking about. And so, I think there's a lot of things that we want to talk about and we need to talk about in North Carolina right now. And so we, tried to pick some plays that kind of deal with that. I can't remember, Mark, if you came and saw Blood Don't Sign My Name that we did last May. I think probably most of your listeners know that story. And what was cool for me about that was not just that we did it, and Mike Wiley was really, gracious to give us the rights to do the world premiere of his ensemble version of the play, because he'd been doing a one-man version for a while, but also that we had people like Eddie McCoy come and talk in person. And if you know the story, Eddie is one of the real important activists in that story, and still somebody who's very socially active and a great historian in the town of Oxford. And, we had people like Tim Tyson there. And I mean, that's just pretty special because that's North Carolina history. And it's, people don't, a lot of people know the story about Dickie Morrow and what happened to him, really kind of a late day lynching, 1970. But I think a lot of people are surprised to learn that part of North Carolina history, and it needs to be the type of thing we talk about more so that we understand kind of the journey that we've gone on together. So, when we have opportunities to do plays like that or plays that address, challenges that women experience, like women's empowerment plays, we've done a few things that kind of fall under that category. We've done some plays that look at challenges that LGBT folks have experienced. Really interesting play we did a year and a half ago called Perfect Arrangement that dealt with kind of the discrimination that queer people experienced in working for the federal government. They were fired in huge numbers during the Red Scare. And, I just feel like there's so many stories that people need to hear to understand, where we are as a society right now and where we need to go. And, I don't necessarily, I guess I just think of it as socially relevant, is plays that start a socially relevant discussion. And I think a huge part of that is our artistic director, Patrick Torres, who's a really, really great kind of partner and collaborator, and he finds those scripts, and then I kind of work to, help him, I just work to champion those ideas and try and find, the right kind of partners so that when we do those plays, we have good conversations. You mentioned Sherry Holmes. Sherry's amazing. Yeah. I love what Triangle Friends of African American Arts do, and so we've done an event with them 3 times now that's like a African American theater preview event where, actually I heard you last week talking about Worried 2.0, and
yes.
Dasan was part of that event as well, which was really cool. So, I love those kind of partnerships because I think that's huge. As theaters, we need to be in dialogue with the artists like Renee and like Dasan who are writing work and who are producing interesting new work and, and helping them find audiences, introducing them to our audiences. Obviously we like to produce plays by Mike and guys like that. There's other local playwrights who, we know well and would like to do more of their work, because I think all that stuff is really what makes theater alive and relevant. There's nothing wrong with Shakespeare. Like, Shakespeare's great too, but we can't just rest on the work that's been part of the canon for a long, long time, because, society, the world moves on. The world is, faces similar but different challenges, and, those voices have to be heard.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I've noticed. It seems to be different. Like I said, I've definitely noticed it with what you do at Theater at the Park, but also I've just seen it at other places as well, which is that we oftentimes have, how can I put it? It seems like the film industry is catching up more with what theater's been doing for a while. Because, like I said, whether it was Hidden Images, whether it was the ones we just talked about with Best of Enemies, whether it's some of the other ones that are coming out, Us, that Dean mentioned earlier. But it seems like the film industry, and there was another time, I remember Jane Pittman way back when, that did a lot of socially conscious stuff. But there was a time that we seem to have gotten away from that in the movie industry, maybe gone with more of the blockbuster elements. But it seems like we're coming back into kind of it might be because of the world we live in now, but films that are dealing more with social issues, whereas theater, I don't think that narrative ever stopped. It seems to me that throughout the course of time, as long as I can remember, theater has always been involved in trying to keep these stories alive and trying to make sure that people understood it from that historical perspective. And I even think when you were in D.C., from what I've read, you were even doing some innovative things that were involved in telling these kind of stories. So you weren't just doing it here, but you've done it in other places that you've been part of as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, and I'm at Raleigh Little Theater, although we do really love theater.
I'm in Raleigh Little Theater.
They're great.
Right.
That's okay. That's okay.
Right. I'm in Raleigh Little Theater.
So, yeah.
Sometimes.
But yeah, you're right, and I think that's a really interesting topic because, just thinking, I think you're right that some of the kind of studios have seemed to kind of catch on a little bit more in the last few years, or at least the Academy has. But it's always, I think, interesting. Those of us who work in theater think a lot about where trends in the film industry are relevant and where they're not. And theater is basically just a money-losing enterprise, some people figure out how to make money in theater, but most of your theaters in the United States are nonprofit because theater is just not a way to make any kind of money because it takes tons of people, and at the end of the day, what you're doing is has a very finite cap, how many people can see it and how much they're willing to pay for it. So, but at the same time, theater is a lot cheaper to produce than film for the most part, and at least unless you're talking about really large scale theater. So it means that you can kind of, theater I think you're right, the theater has been more responsive to what is happening in the world because the capital costs are so much lower. So, it's easier to take a chance on a lesser known playwright or on something really new than some of the studios are willing to do. But, then the downside is, there's a real kind of Hamilton is an amazing piece of art. It's possibly obviously I'm just preaching to the choir, but one of the most incredible pieces of art it's probably the best piece, one of the best pieces of art, if not the best piece of art this century so far. But that's one in a million, with the commercial success of that. And that speaks to, a lot of vision and a lot of really great collaboration. But we could live the rest of our lives and not see another play that does that well, and most theater just doesn't ever kind of reach those levels of popular acclaim because it doesn't have the kind of built-in advantages of film, and we all talk about it a lot. What does the future of technology mean for our art form? And it's, there's possibilities of streaming things and stuff, but it's not the same. It's really supposed to be a live experience. So it's interesting. I think you're right that that theater is ahead of film in some ways, but I think that we also don't have the ability to impact things with a few rare exceptions that film does. So we kind of play different roles in the market, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
But you just mentioned it earlier because you're so right. It's difficult to make a living in the theater, or it's difficult to make a living in the arts in general. Even Julius can talk to that with his Black Cotton and everything. So how do you encourage people to actually be able to succeed and thrive? Like I said, they might not be able to become rich, but we know a lot of times theater people, even people in executive positions, wind up having to work second and third jobs and things of that nature. So I was just wondering, when you talk to people and you talk to even kids, because I know sometimes you're probably going into the school systems or the school system is coming to Raleigh Little Theater, and I'm sure that there's always the kid that wants to be, the next great actor. So it's like being the next great athlete, the next LeBron. They want to be that person that they see on the big screen, but they also understand that they might have to be in theater until that happens, or if that happens. But how do you encourage them to understand that it's going to be a struggle and that that's part of the conversation? So I was just wondering, what is some of that story that you tell them when you're talking to them? Like I said, you came out of it, you were an intern, like you mentioned, at the Arts Council, and then you've done it throughout your life. But I was just wondering, how do you, when you're talking to other people that might think of this as a career, how do you encourage them, or what warnings do you give them?
Yeah, well, it's I think you're right. It's a challenging field to make it in, and I think that there's different ways to go about it. I mean, I think like anything, it's what do you want to kind of accomplish, And I think the most kind of successful and happy artists I know, whether they're in theater or in another field, they have an idea about what they want to get out of it, and having kind of a specific goal in mind is important. I think that some people really have a mission. They have a certain kind of story they want to tell, and if they do a really good job of it, they can be world renowned and very successful. And other people enjoy the act of creating art, whether it's being an actor or creating visual art or being a musician, but it's really kind of about the self-expression. It's about the collaboration. And so, a lot of people are happy doing it while also having a full-time job, or maybe they have a career as a teacher in a creative profession, and then they have a career where they also make art on the side, but teaching their craft is the way that they pay the bills. And I think whenever I talk to people about it, I just really encourage them to think about it's not just acting or painting or playing music or whatever it is, but really be thoughtful about where you get the satisfaction from and what it is you kind of want to accomplish. Because the more you know about what you want to do, the more you can kind of develop a niche. And, there's also people in the arts who are generalists, and I think a lot of people who are kind of generalists end up producing because it's helpful to be able to do a lot of different things well. But, I've seen people who are really happy, who are, teaching most of their time and performing a little bit. And I've seen people who are, really unhappy, who are performing all the time, but not getting the recognition that they desire. And so there's different, for everybody, that kind of equation is a little bit different. And the more you kind of are self-aware to know what it is that you want to accomplish and how you want to make an impact, the more likely you are to be able to be successful, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, because one of the complaints that you just hear from the common person is that people, and we've been talking about it on this show before, is that people sometimes start worrying about what I call the price points, because, it's not cheap to do, like you said, these productions. You have to pay, in a lot of cases, the actors. You have to design the sets. You have to do different other things. And then whether it's a big location like a Carolina Theater, or that's actually a medium-sized location, or a bigger one like DPAC, or whether it's something around the size of y'all space and everything, then people start complaining about, whatever that price point is, whether that's $15, $20, $25, or even up to the 50s and everything. And I'm just wondering how you deal with that when you have those conversations with people, because sometimes people will give that conversation that, that sometimes they don't always understand the worth of art. And I think that part of that has to do with our education system too. So I'm just wondering how you address that when you talk to people, when they are telling you that they would love to come to see a play, but they're afraid of whatever the price point is. And I think that y'all are one of the more affordable places around the area.
Right. Well, it helps that we're a community theater. So a lot of the people who are working on productions are donating their time. And we do pay some of the artists involved, like we pay directors, designers, musicians, but we don't pay actors, we don't pay stagehands, we don't pay the people who build the sets and the costumes, because the idea is that, those folks are basically learning a craft and they're getting that experience. So our ticket prices are lower than a lot of other theaters, so we don't tend to get that feedback a lot. But, I think that it is true of any kind of artistic enterprise that, people who are in the consumer, people who are consuming art oftentimes don't think about all the different steps that it takes to produce a piece of art. And certainly, the majority of people aren't thinking about overhead, and that's an expense that, any organization has if they have a space. And, unfortunately, like, overhead is super expensive. Just having a building and paying utilities and insurance and, restocking the paper supplies is not like a fun thing. It's not like what gets people really jazzed, but it's like, an expense that every organization has. So, I think just whenever I'm in those kind of conversations with people, it's just, talking about, just what it really costs to produce a piece of art, and gosh, if you think about, really kind of any, almost literally any piece of art that you would want to consume, even if it's like, I guess, like on the spectrum of things that are just like created in front of you, whether it's like an improv performance or, a piece of visual art that's created live. I don't know if you guys saw Oh My, that the guys from Austria that did the live projections around at St. Aug's, and they're supposed to do it at Dix Park, but that got rained out. It was at St. Agnes, and then at Dix Park, and then they did it at Raleigh Memorial Auditorium. But, it's like live projections. They think of it as like digital graffiti. It's pretty cool. Did you get out to that, Mark?
I did not get out to that. I've heard amazing things about that and some other things that are similar to that. So if they ever do it at Dorothea Dix Park, I'm the one that was rained out, I would definitely hope to catch that, because you're right. Those kind of innovative things are very important. And one of the things that I love about your space, and people don't even think about the cost of that, is that the Raleigh Little Theater has that lovely rose garden space, which I don't know how often it's used, but I always think it should be used more, because it's such a beautiful space, and it's a place that you can do outside theater, like I said, like Julius was talking about with the other farm element. You might have to deal with the bugs if you're out there, but hey, but you'll see great theater while you're fighting off the bugs.
Right. Yeah, and the thing, I was going to say, like, and I think you would really enjoy it. I think they will be back, but, like those guys, like, it's all created in front of you, but, like, the amount of work that goes into planning that, and, like, the equipment costs and the research they did. Like, they did a piece at St. Aug's that was about the history of Jack Johnson, and I didn't know that Jack Johnson had died at St. Agnes. He had gotten in a car accident, and he wouldn't be treated anywhere else because of his race, and so they had to take him to St. Agnes. And unfortunately, he died like shortly after he got there. But just the amount of work that goes into making that event happen, even though it's done spontaneously in front of you, it was a pretty significant amount of time and effort that went into that. But I think also really good art, you don't see that. It looks effortless when it's created. So I think that, back to your question, I think that the more as arts organizations and even as artists we do to educate people on our process, I think that's really important, because it's it's both invites audiences to be more engaged in the ultimate end product, because they can learn about how maybe a group of artists devised the storyline or decided to why they were inspired to create a piece about Jack Johnson or about a horrible murder that happened in Oxford, North Carolina, or fill in a blank, some really compelling story. Then they're both invested in that, but then they also understand that there's like a real process behind this work, and just it develops kind of hopefully more of a love of the arts and an appreciation for artists.
Yeah, because I sure didn't know that story about Jack Johnson either, because that sounds very similar to the Charles Drew story, the founder of the whole process with blood plasma, who was actually also sent to a hospital during the time of segregation, and also did not get treated and passed away because of not being able to get the treatment of even something that he actually helped to create. So he was actually one of the founders and the creators of that, and could not even get the treatment. And like I said, he was one of the founders of the whole treatment. So that was a sad story, and I did not realize the parallels between that and Jack Johnson. Do you oftentimes find interesting conversations between people trying to understand the differences or trying to lump them together between, say, community organizations and community art and professional art? Because, yes, they have some of the same issues sometimes, but there are also differences. So, like, even like if you're talking visual art, you got like a Tyndall gallery, which is a professional gallery, but then you also have some of the more community kind of galleries that are out there. And yes, they have some issues that are the same, but I imagine y'all probably have that same conversation in theater, where there are some theaters that might be, like I mentioned earlier, the more big production kind of venues, like a DPAC or something like that, and then the smaller communities like the Hayti or like Raleigh Little Theater.
Yeah, I think there are interesting. Well, there's ways in which it's a very different animal, and then there's ways in which it's not. I think your savvy audience members, I guess, can tell the difference between, like, maybe they might pick up the difference based on, like, the price. I'm, going to this gallery for free, although, like you said, a lot of galleries are very professionally run, and I'm paying to go to this at a museum. Or with us, like, our ticket price is so much less than DPAC that I think that most people kind of just figure it out. And I think that's actually one of the things that's really lovely about community art, is that, if we are in a situation where an actor is sick or has some kind of crazy thing happen and they can't go on and somebody has to cover the part, I think people can be very forgiving at a community arts organization, because they understand that part of the goal is education and performers getting experience. And so I think that we get some more leeway in some places because people understand that it's a different animal. But there's other ways in which we directly compete. Like, we're trying to as some of the professional theater companies in town were trying to license the same intellectual property. You know, like one of the plays we got the rights to this next year that we're really excited about is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. And do you know that? Do you know that piece?
I don't know that piece. Tell me a little bit about that piece and explain it to me, because it sounds like an interesting title.
Yeah, so it actually played at DPAC, I think, a year and a half ago, and there hasn't been a local production. And as a community theater, we got the right to do the first local production, which was like a little bit of a coup. It started, the first production was in London at the National Theater, and then it toured. Then it went to New York and stayed there for a while, and then toured all the way around the country. And what's interesting about it is that in some ways it's a real traditional kind of narrative. It's like a murder mystery. Somebody has killed a dog, and you kind of realize that somebody didn't like their neighbor's dog, so they just decided to end it. But what's unusual about it is that the protagonist is a young man. He's a teenager who has autism, and so he is trying to, and he's a smart guy. He's trying to figure out and solve the mystery, but he also, has challenges. Like, he needs to go different places to learn clues, but he has a really hard time, like, going on the subway because it's super loud, and there's lots of scary sensory, stimulus happening around him. And so he has to kind of figure out how to solve this mystery, and also, how to overcome the own challenges that he has because of his challenges. And that's just a type of play that a professional theater probably would have liked to have done because it was really well received at DPAC, but we got the rights to do it, so now we get to do it. So, that's just like one of the examples in which we're kind of in direct competition. But, I mean, the cool thing about a community theater getting to do it is that we are, we probably serve a lot more people who have autism than most professional theaters do, because we have different kind of ways to engage. Like, you can come and volunteer, and we have a number of volunteers who have autism, and we do sensory-friendly performances, and we have a large education program that offers a lot of kind of special opportunities for people who have disabilities. And so there's just way more points of engagement. So it's kind of,
and I imagine,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I imagine that you're probably going to do the same thing that you've done with some of the other films. You mentioned Blood Does Not My Name and some of the other ones. So I imagine that since there is a community of people that are facing this disability in our area, that you're probably going to have some discussion kind of groups, which the professional theaters probably also would not necessarily do, or would find might have a harder time connecting to those groups. So I imagine there's like some autism societies here in North Carolina that even in the Triangle that you'll probably be able to engage with, so that there are actual discussions afterwards revolving around both the play but also some of the issues that people with autism face.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and we're working closely with a group called Arts Access, which if you haven't had Betsy on, she would be a really great guest. She's the executive director, and they're an organization that works to make the arts in the Triangle accessible to people who have disabilities. And they actually help people all throughout the state. They do services like providing audio description, and they do capacity building for artists and arts organizations, like understanding how to serve people who have disabilities. And they do showcases of artists who have disabilities. They've got an upcoming event called Series of Fortunate Events that I'll do a quick shout out to. We've hosted it in the past, but we didn't fit our schedule this year, so we weren't able to host it this coming year. But they'll do like a musical, like a night with a bunch of musical acts, and they'll do another night of like films that, feature actors who have disabilities. And I think they're doing a theater night or a storytelling night as well. But so we're working closely with that organization, and it's not that a professional theater might do nothing, but we'll probably do more, and we're also just closer to a grassroots level organization. So the type of partnerships that we'll develop with community organizations are maybe a bit more robust. They're a bit more kind of, peer-to-peer, rather than like a really large professional theater trying to partner with a really, modest-sized community grassroots organization. So I think we're able to kind of develop different kinds of ways, like you said, similar to maybe some of the other community partnerships than much larger organizations are able to do.
Now, what were some of the important things that you learned yourself, just in terms of arts administration and arts in general? Like I said, you've been doing it for a number of years. You first came into this area, like you said, when you were doing the internship, but now you've been the director there at Raleigh Little Theater for a while. So what are some of the important things that you have learned about arts in general and arts administration? Some that might have surprised you, some that you were expecting, but what are some of the valuable lessons that you have learned?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, we've tried a whole bunch of different things at the theater in the 7 years that I've been there, and a lot of things have gone pretty well, but we've like failed at a lot of different things too. And so I think like some of the things I've realized are just that a lot of like community partnerships take a while to develop. You know, it's like so we started doing sensory-friendly performances, which are performances. We've just so far done them in our family series, but we're now going to do one in our adult series as well around Curious Incident. And those are performances that have like accommodations built into them so that people who have autism can come out and enjoy the show and maybe not be, you know, worried about some really extreme, you know, if there's like some really loud sound effects or some really bright lights, we might tone those down a little bit. We might warn people. We develop some pre-show materials. We have like fidget devices. And the most important thing is that we just let people know they're welcome. They're not going to be judged. The first time we did one of those, like 100 people show up. And we're like, well, okay, that's pretty good. That's not a lot of people. Well, the next time we did it, we had 125 people show up. And the last time we did, we had 170 people show up. But, you know, I think like one of the big things is that with any kind of new partnership or new type of programming where you want to reach an audience that might not be engaging with your organization, it just takes time to build relationships. People have to get to know you. They have to trust you that you're going to do a good job of it. And you know, and it also, I think a lot of times it takes us longer to build relationships and start new types of programs than we want. You know, it's just hard work, and you know, people are busy, right? Like we're all busy. Like all of us are probably, you know, have super long to-do lists. And so, you know, it just takes a while for people to say, okay, with the limited time I have, I'm going to invest it in this organization. I'm going to go check out what they're doing. I'm going to sign up for this show, class, camp, volunteer opportunity, whatever it is. So I think one of the things is that it's taken longer to build up certain things than I would have liked, but it's just learning kind of patience. And I think one of the other ways in which we've kind of failed is that sometimes when we've tried to do new things, we have to have really strong partnerships. And especially if we step out of what we're known for, we have to have really, really strong partnerships. So I'll give an example, which is that we tried a few different times to do hopscotch day parties, and sometimes that went pretty well, and other times we had like literally like 50 or 100 people show up. And it really all kind of depended on the strength of the partners. We did one with a record label out of Carborough called Paradise of Bachelors, and we did great. We did another one with some folks who aren't local anymore, so they're really great folks, but they just didn't have the reach. You know, Cradle, those do really well. When we've tried to partner with lesser-known producers, most of the time, like, just because Raleigh Little Theater, as much as people really love it as a producing theater or maybe a place to, like, go take a class, they don't know us as a live music venue. So when we kind of want to partner and do something a little bit different, we're really reliant on the strength of our partners, because as strong as I think we have a pretty strong brand, it's also very specific. It's known for certain things. And when we try to do things outside of that, people may follow us, but they may not. So I think like a lot of the lessons learned have just been about like having patience to develop new kinds of programs, and just the importance of having really strong partners. You know, and I guess an example of one of the strongest partners is Sherry with Triangle Friends of African American Arts. Like when we do events with Sherry, we sell them out. Like people know Sherry, they know she's awesome, they know she knows what's going on in the community, so we pack it out. Like that's not a question. So, you know, it's just, and I hope we've been able to be helpful to her as well. I think so, because, she keeps wanting to partner with us, which is really great. But, it's just the importance of, like, everybody bringing their, their best and their value to the table and trying to help each other out.
Now, to both you and Julius, because I just double-checked online to make sure he was still there, how important do you think marketing is? Because like I said, whether it's Black Cotton, which is an art form, or whether it's what you're doing with Raleigh Little Theater, I sometimes feel that a lot of times people in general, whether they're arts presenters or arts organizations, don't necessarily understand the importance of marketing. So I was just wondering how important marketing is to both of you and ways that you find to do your marketing.
Yeah, marketing is huge. Yeah, we have a great marketing and communications guy named Fidel Benton. He came to us from Fayetteville State University, and he's been with us for a couple of years now. And, I think he does a really good job. And I also think that it's about a team approach. Like he needs to collaborate, and he does with Patrick, our artistic director, because and that's part of the strength, right? Like, because marketing is not like an island. It's not like Fidel, just kind of sits by himself in a quiet room and figures out like genius strategies to sell it. Like he works really collaboratively with Patrick and myself, and when appropriate, our education department or our outside partners, and really kind of talks about what is the story we're trying to tell, why is this piece relevant to the community. And in those conversations, sometimes really great things come up. Sometimes like, oh, we thought about calling this organization. They might really care. Maybe they want to do a post-show discussion with us. Other times it might be like, oh, we know a civic organization that would really care about this. Maybe they want to come. Like we could set up some kind of cross-promotional agreement with them, and maybe they have an event coming up and we can talk about that and they can talk about our thing. So, I think that marketing piece is super important, but it's more than marketing. It's about kind of relationship building, and it's about kind of creatively telling the story in a way that, kind of connects the dots in the community.
Definitely. And Julius, if you're still there, how about marketing with you?
Still here. Hello?
So, yes. What are some of the ways that you do your marketing?
Most of my marketing is social media and, trying to be catchy and catch people's attention and stay current.
And what are some of the ways that you've done that with the Black Cotton? What are some of the unique ways that you've tried to stay current and let folks know what's going on?
Doing podcasts, being at different types of events, trying to have pieces for people and every type of moment, and just keeping my name relevant and promoting and giving to the community, hoping that it comes back.
So who knows? Maybe, Charles, there could be a Black Cotton event at Raleigh Little Theater at some point.
Yeah, man.
I would love to do it. All right, we'll be in touch.
So y'all have to communicate and find ways to make that happen and everything. Now, one of the things, Charles, that I've always found fascinating, and I talked about it with my friend Ray, is that sometimes everybody, and I'm sure you deal with this at Raleigh Little Theater, everybody thinks that it's easy to be a producer until they realize what you just mentioned, the cost of doing a show or what the time and the involvement of doing these things is. So I know that there's tons of great ideas out there, and there's tons of very wonderful ideas, but I sometimes wonder if people actually understand what it takes to do something. And is this something that you actually, when you're talking to people, they're coming to Raleigh Little Theater that are from the community and they want to do something, is this a conversation that you actually have with them where you're sitting there and you're letting them know that, yes, it's a great idea or this is something we're interested in, but you need to be aware of X, Y, and Z?
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the times I got a chance to work on that was at the Capitol Fringe Festival in D.C., and that's a really fun organization. I think Fringe festivals are great examples of places where people can try out producing and see if they like it and, see what kind of works for them. But, my main advice to people, if they want to do shows with us or if they want to do shows in other places is just, develop a strong team, because there's almost always more work than one person can do. So, how do you have a team, and, what can you, how do you put together people who can do the things that maybe you don't love doing or maybe you're not as good at, and how do you really focus on the things that you're passionate about with the project? So, that's a little bit different for everybody, but, I think like anybody can do it. It's just, trying to find the right people to help you and try to find enough resources, and there's other events like in the Triangle, I think, that are really good opportunities to try that. Like SparkCon, I think. I mean, SparkCon isn't really like anything that exists anywhere else that I've lived, but it is a little bit like a fringe festival. And if you have like a great idea, you can kind of make it happen at SparkCon. They'll let you put on like fill in the blank con. Like one of my favorite ones is that I went to a couple of years ago is like what's it called? It's called like SwearCon, and it's all like just like a celebration of like using dirty words. And they'll just do like fun events. Like the year I went, they did like an NCAA style tournament to determine the best swear words, and it was super fun. Like they had people like do sketches and do different skits, and I think there's just lots of opportunities to to kind of make your own thing happen, through events like SparkCon or other kind of community events. And through doing stuff like that, you kind of learn what it is that you enjoy about producing and kind of how you need help to build out your team to make it happen.
Now, which swear word won the tournament? That's what I'm curious about. You said it was done as a tournament.
Yeah, not safe for work. So I'll tell you next time I see you. How's that?
Okay, you can tell me next time you see me, or just to let folks know, you can give us a letter and they can try to figure it out. Was it the F?
They had a whole bracket that was compound swears, and it was one of the compound swears. And I think it was like one of a couple different things. So I don't want to be on the record saying the wrong one, but we can get the answer for that. And it was more just fun, like the process of hearing people, do like readings from the Urban Dictionary or different stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that was totally off guard and everything. Now, one thing, just to change topics a little bit, that people do not know about you, but I know about you, is that you are also a musician, because you have performed. I understand we just had a major holiday. I don't know if you performed this year for it, but one of the holidays that happens during, I guess it's the month of March, is St. Pat's Day. Everybody gets into their green and the celebration of their Italian and things of that nature. And I know one time I saw you at a St. Pat's Day festival and you were playing one of those instruments. So do you still play?
Yeah. Yeah, I do play from time to time. I sub with the North Carolina Symphony a few times a year. I'm going to play with them. Actually, I don't think I have any more dates with them, but I just played with them a few weeks ago. Sometimes I play with a kind of a free jazz group called the Poly Orchard. We normally play at sometimes we play at the Carrick. We've got a gig coming up at Arcana in a few weeks. That's run by a bass player out of Durham named David Menestrez. And then I'll just, I don't know, I've sat in with other groups. Oh, I'm also playing at Sharp Nine Gallery in early April with a guy out of D.C. named Brad Lindy. And we're playing the music of Jeff Lederer, who's a saxophone player, and so I probably play a gig every maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and it's just kind of a fun thing. I enjoy doing. I'm not a great saxophone player. I'm a solid saxophone player. I can like read some music. I'm not going to like play a solo that blows your mind, but I really do enjoy playing music, and I love getting to do stuff like that.
And it's not just the saxophone that you play. If I remember correctly, it was also one of the, I don't want to call them fringe instruments, but it's like another instrument that is more of a, for lack of a better term, ethnically proud instrument that I have also known you to play as well. I think that's where I saw you playing during the St. Pat's Day parade, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, maybe I brought a clarinet. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably either saxophone or clarinet, but but I should pick up one of those more obscure instruments. That'd be fun.
Yeah, you might have to do that at some point. Now, in terms of education and things of that nature, how do you think that we're doing in terms of arts and letting folks be taught about the arts in education? That's something we talked about on this show a number of times, and our theory is that the school systems are not doing that good of a job, and that they should do a much better job in terms of encouraging our kids to understand the power of the arts and how arts is important, even in critical thinking and even in being able to have people understand what's going on around the world around them. But you, as an arts administrator, and also an artist yourself, I was just wondering, what do you think about this conversation, and how is the school system doing in terms of training our youth in terms of understanding art, both as an appreciation of art, but also teaching about art as a performance ability as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think what's been happening over time, unfortunately, is like just, obviously a shift towards standardized testing, which leaves less space for other things that are important, not just art, but, the things that kind of make students really well-rounded. And, there's this move now towards STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And that's had, more success in some places than others. There's been a bill that's been introduced to the North Carolina legislature about having an arts education requirement for kids to graduate from high school in North Carolina, and it's been written so as to be a budget neutral bill that would basically just, from my understanding of it, it would just require kids to take an elective at some point. So it's a pretty modest proposal. If anything, it's maybe just very like, let's have a little something. But I think it's a long-term issue, and I think what's happening is that nonprofits are trying to fill the gap in providing arts, and it just relies on organizations like Black Cotton, like Raleigh Little Theater, like all kinds, being outsourced in a way, and hopefully we can kind of continue to work on that. But I think that it's it's definitely a thing that's on everybody's minds in the arts. From my as far as I know.
Yeah, definitely it's on everybody's mind in terms of arts and everything. And the other thing that I know is that a lot of times people is on their mind, and we talked about it here, and even earlier when we were talking to Julius, and I'm sure he would know, if a lot of our artists are very good at the art part of art, but then sometimes I wonder if some of the artists get lost in the business side of art. I mean, like when you talk about the big term of show business, there's a reason that they put that business in the title, because there's a business element to it. And sometimes I wonder, even if some of our veteran artists don't necessarily do a good job of understanding the business element of show business, art business, whatever you want to call it. So I was just wondering, what are some of your thoughts on that? Do you think that we do a good job of teaching artists about the business side of art? And also, like I said, I put you in that category, and I'm not saying that in a negative, of being an arts administrator, because you are also a performer and an artist yourself. But I was just wondering, do you sometimes run into people that also want to stereotype art administrators? Because I know sometimes even our art community sometimes gets caught up in the fact that they feel that arts administrators don't necessarily give them enough support. So I just wondered some of your thoughts on both of those.
Yeah, well, I think it's really smart for artists to think it has a really, I don't know if this is still the case, but I had a friend who graduated from there a few years ago as a music major and told me that to graduate from Indiana, you had to get a minor in something other than music. So it forced everybody to think about something that they wanted to know about. I believe she got hers in communications. You could pick any number of different things. Yeah. I think, you've seen interesting examples, especially with like the estate of Aretha Franklin and Prince and folks like this, and who's unfortunately died recently, that like you become aware of them, as people who ran businesses, So at any level, I think it's unrealistic to think that you can just practice your art and not have to worry about the business side. I don't personally feel like there's necessarily that much, I feel like, artists and arts administrators were kind of in it together. Hopefully we help each other out. I don't know what Julius's perspective. I think, Julius, you do different kinds of work in the arts. What's your perspective on that question of, how well we kind of train artists to be business people? What do you think?
I think that with as many options we have now to be business people online, like Etsy, Pinterest, I think artists definitely should understand how to be business people, to learn how to use Amazon to get their products out. It's very important.
Yeah, that's very true. And one of the other things is, I know that, don't know if it's already happened yet or not, but I know every year there's the big push for Art Day, where we try to encourage art organizations, whether they're big or small, to kind of descend on the legislature and let them know the importance of art and the importance of arts organizations so that those arts organizations get the funding that they need. Has that event already happened, or is it on its way to happening? I can't remember the date of whether it's already happened or whether it's on its way to happening, Charles.
Yeah, it's actually tomorrow and Wednesday.
Okay.
And wait, does this air tonight, Mark? Or are we airing live?
It is. We're airing live.
Okay, I thought we were. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Because I've listened to you on delay. But
okay.
Yeah, so I don't know that it's too late to apply. Go to artsnc.org is the place where that information is. And tomorrow is a day of we have speakers, we have performances, we learn about kind of what the ask is for the state legislature. And then Wednesday is the day that we all go to visit our legislators, and we kind of go in there and speak directly to the impact of the arts in their district. And we ask them, the ask this year is for $1 for the arts, which means $1 for every citizen, every resident is actually the right thing, of North Carolina, which would be a pretty significant increase for the budget of the state's Arts Council. And that's money that then ends up in all 100 counties because it gives money to the state arts councils, the county arts, and they are able to give grants to individual artists. They give grants to arts organizations. They make sure that, even in small towns, that there's work happening. There's, arts festivals, that there's art walks, that there's concerts happening, that there's plays, just all the different things. And those are huge things. And I think in some ways those can make a bigger impact in smaller communities. To tie it back to that rural theme, a grant of $5,000 in a rural area can go a super long way because, your cost of renting a space or whatever is less. So that's the hope this year. We'll see. We'll keep asking, even if they say no again this year. But the ask is $1 for the arts, and even if people can't go to the event, they can check out artsnc.org and tweet about it. They can even sign up for alerts so that when important issues in the arts come up, they can contact their legislators and know that they really care about supporting the arts in North Carolina. And so, yeah, I think you're right, Mark. It's really important that we have our voice heard and consistently, talk about the importance of what we do.
And even on the national level, I was wondering, do you think that we're doing a good job of supporting the arts? Because every time I turn around, it seems like arts organizations nationally are even getting cut, whether that's the humanities, whether that's the NEA, whether that's whoever. So it seems like the arts are not just being threatened on our local and state level, but also on a consistent basis on our national level.
Yeah, I think it's a little more. So I think both years of the current administration, they've proposed eliminating the NEA, but Congress has ignored that. And they've actually given kind of modest increases to the NEA over the last few years. So it's not now in some states it's been bad, and in other states it's been good. It's really kind of a mixed picture. And I'm not necessarily I know little bits and pieces, but I'm not knowledgeable about a whole lot about what's happening on a state-by-state basis. But the NEA has been pretty flat or slightly up the last few years. Now it's actually not that big of a budget if you think about, the fact that we're a country of over 300 million. I think that what's happened in our field is that we've become a lot more reliant on individuals than government. If you just look across the country at what's funding arts organizations. And, in some ways that can have some upside. I mean, of course, I think everybody who is an artist or runs an arts organization would love to have more money to do more cool things. But I think also when you're getting money from individuals, it's not as political. So it, in a way, it kind of frees you up to do more interesting things. So it's a complex situation. Of course, I think a lot of it comes down to I see it as a bit to think that we'd have some more resources to be able to fill the gaps, for example. Now, where those come from, it'd be great if it was a mix of public money and private money. But, I think at the end of the day, it's a challenge to figure out how to, it's just a question of, how do you kind of try and solve the problems that are ahead? And, we'll gladly work with governments or private funders or whoever can kind of support the work that needs to get done.
Yeah, because it's interesting you bring that up because I'm actually on the board and we have a meeting tomorrow with the Carolina Theater in Durham. And one of the things we've been talking about is the fact that seems like it's a lot of people that are pulling back from their funding, not just nationally, but it seems to me, and I made this observation in one of our subcommittee meetings, that even corporations are pulling back. So it seems to me that a lot of the money that we're getting now is what you just said, is private money. So even the corporations seem to be pulling back their support of arts organizations. I remember years back in the past where you would see tons of corporate sponsors of even festivals like Centerfest or the Blues Festival or things of that nature, but you don't see as many of them because, of course, they want to see a certain amount of massive amounts of eyeballs looking at their product. And, you know, whether it's a blues festival that might be in front of thousands or maybe even tens of thousands, that's still not 100,000 to 1 million, which they can get off of, say, a ball game at the Bull Stadium or some of the other things that they might be investing in that they're not necessarily investing in terms of investing in the smaller kind of festivals. And I was wondering, have you run into that problem? I know it's just part of your as much funding from the corporate world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know that the Triangle has ever been a huge corporate, that there's ever been a huge amount of corporate money in the Triangle, just because if you look around, there's not a lot of huge corporations that are based in the Triangle. So we do have some examples of some pretty, you know, there's some banks that are very generous. There's some other organizations that are very generous, but it's had because of all the banks that are headquartered there. So that's never been, I think, a huge thing. I think if you actually, I'm sure you know more about what the history of funding the arts in Durham is, but in Raleigh we have a per capita allocation for arts funding. So as the population grows, Raleigh has put more and more resources into the arts. You know, Cary, for example, has built some really nice facilities, and they've continued to invest in the arts. So they built Coca Booth and then the Cary Arts Center and then the Cary Theater in the last 2 years. So I think that, you know, it's a kind of mixed bag. I think a lot of local governments have invested more, and that's maybe filled in the gap. And then looking nationally, I think you're right that probably nationally, I think I've seen numbers in like from Theater Communications Group that corporate giving has been down or at least flat. But I know that individual giving has been up because, you know, organizations that do a really good job, they can just go to somebody and say, hey, like we really need to put on this event. We really need to take this program into the schools, and if you make that really compelling case and somebody can write you a check, then they'll do it, you know? And so I think it's just been a lot of ways a shift towards like certain kinds of giving over the last few years. And I think that'll probably continue because I think you're right, Mark. Like if a corporation is looking at how to spend a certain amount of money, well, you know, you can spend that on mass media, you could spend that on online advertising, or you could spend it on sponsoring an arts event, and it's just a question of where, you know, a lot of times they might see a higher ROI on something else. So it's good that we've had certain local governments and a lot of individuals step up.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always important that the local people do step up and support the arts because, like I said, the arts is very vital to our society. And we've got about 5 more minutes to go before we wrap up this particular edition of the show. But, Charles, before you get off and everything, I've got 2 questions. One, and we'll get to Julius as well, but are there any other shows that are coming up that you really would like our audience that is listening either now or on the replays later to know about other than those that you have mentioned? And then I'll get to the other question, and then we'll have a question for both of you to wrap it up. But is there any other shows that are coming up at Raleigh Little Theater that you would like folks to know about?
Yeah, I'm really excited that we're doing we're doing West Side Story in concert with the Raleigh Symphony Orchestra in May 18th and 19th. And that's really cool. West Side Story hasn't been done in the state of North Carolina since HB2 because the Bernstein estate only recently started granting rights again. So that event will, some proceeds from that event will benefit Equality North Carolina. So that's a thing that we're pretty excited about. And I think just, you know, to hear that kind of music outdoors, you know, with a live orchestra is a thing that you don't get to see. And it's certainly a lot more affordable to see it with us, even though the performance will be great because the Raleigh Symphony Orchestra is you know, kind of like the Durham Symphony. They're a professional group. You know, they're not the North Carolina Symphony that people are also really fond of, but they're a really, really great orchestra. So yeah, that's coming up on May 18th and 19th. And then looking out a little further, in September, we're doing a play by Dominique Morisseau called Blood at the Root, and it's about the Jena 6 in Louisiana, and a really kind of horrible incident of racial intimidation, but about kind of some very courageous young people who told that story. Are you familiar with that story, Mark?
Yes, I'm very familiar with that story. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and so this is a play that's just starting to get done around the country. We have a really amazing director who's just moving back to the area called Lamarv Jones, and I think it's just a story that's really important to understand. I think our artistic director Patrick really kind of sees it as an important look at how we understand and cope with symbols of hate, and how we, stand up in front of that and then move, like kind of rise above it. And I think that's going to be really interesting. He's got some very exciting ideas about community engagement and conversations that'll be coming around that. And it's a really, really beautiful piece. It uses a lot of poetry, a lot of movement. I think it's kind of an interesting way that a lot of theater artists, I think, are trying to move towards more multidisciplinary work like that uses like movement and poetry and music to kind of address important, controversial topics. And so I'm really excited about that play as well.
Cool. And what's the website that people can go to find out about what the Raleigh Little Theater has going on? So what is the best website to reach out to you? And if there's a personal email for you, how can people reach out to you if they're hearing this and are interested in seeing what the season is looking like, or just reaching out to you to talk about doing stuff there?
Yeah. The website is, Raleigh Little Theater, and we spell theater with an RE.org. And my email address is charles@RaleighLittleTheater, again with an RE.org.
All right. And real quickly, before we get off and everything, Julius, how can folks reach you as well?
You can go to my website, www.blackcotton.us, and click on the Contact Us tab, and put in your information, send me any questions. You can also follow me on Instagram at blackcotton.us, send me a DM.
All right, sounds good. And the question I asked Julius earlier before you got on, Charles, was because I just bought my first one that I have not bought in years. I actually made the mistake, as Dean told me, of actually naming the numbers, because I don't expect to win. These numbers are too close together. But if you won the lottery, what would you do for the Raleigh Little Theater or yourself and your significant other? So if you were to win the lottery, what would you do? Julius has said he's going to build like this super amusement kind of like crazy thing out at the farm. So if you won, what are you doing?
Oh, man. I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question. Man, I'm boring. I'd probably like start a foundation or something and just give grants. Like, I don't, just because I don't think I necessarily have the best ideas, but it would be fun to give money away, like for the future, and let people do stuff. But I'd want to be anonymous. So that would be my other request, is like be able to start a fund at like the Triangle Community Foundation and also be anonymous, but like give lots of money away to artists and arts organizations.
Sounds like a wonderful idea and everything. Dean, we're getting ready to wrap everything up. It looks like we're about at the 9 o'clock hour. Next week, I've got some people that I'm trying to get in touch with because, tax season is upon us, and even arts organizations have to deal with that. So I'm trying to find some people to talk about that lovely thing called taxes, since April 15th is around the corner for those that have not filed. So trying to find some folks to talk about that. And then we've got some other exciting folks both in the activism world and out of the entrepreneurial world that will be coming on the show on the 8th and beyond. Because I know on the 8th we've got actually some young ladies that will be coming on talking about how they are publishing books to encourage our African-American youth to read, but also giving more positive images, both to African-American youth and African Muslim youth, because they are actually, I think, from the Muslim background. And I'm trying to get Medina, who has written a book about Baba Chuck, on that show as well, and a return of Katina Rankin, who has written some children's books in addition to some of the other things that she has done. So we've got some more amazing guests, and I'm glad that Charles and Julius were able to get on the line with us today. I thought we had some very interesting and good conversation, and they noted, as I tell everybody, we always welcome our guests back that have been on the show. If you've got any parting thoughts that you want to share in 30 seconds or a minute for either Julius or Charles, we've got about that time. That if you got any parting thoughts, we would love to hear them.
I got 30 seconds before this thing shuts off, so I'm going to say this right here. As I always say, before you walk out your front door, it's showtime and the world is your stage. Just make sure that people are not watching the rehearsal. With that being said, catch the replay tomorrow on the Skyhawk Radio Network, 2 o'clock p.m. It's Dean Geronimo. Have a great week.
Appreciate you, Dean. And like he said, have a great one. We definitely enjoyed the conversation.